All right, great. Well, why don't I kick it off here? Looks like we have some attendees, panelists look ready to go. Can flex, can stretch. Great. I want to welcome everybody to the webinar roundtable, virtual roundtable. So the roundtable is virtual. So imagine us all around a roundtable. What we're going to be talking about today, or the intention of this, and sort of introduce myself first. I'm Ben Carcio. I'm an advisor to DemandSage. I'm also a mentor in residence at Techstars, an entrepreneur in residence at National Grid, and former founder of a company called Promobox, which is a branch retail marketing platform. So I'm excited here to help facilitate the conversation around collaboration, specifically around collaboration around HubSpot and Google Sheets. But before I do that, why are we here? We at DemandSage are building a platform that's built on top of HubSpot, and HubSpot every year has a partner day, and it's a few days, and partners get to come together, collaborate, talk about all the different things that they're doing. So this day that we're having today, and the schedule of this was supposed to coincide with a physical event, and based on the recent news, that event was canceled. So we decided to switch that to a virtual event, so we could have the same type of conversations virtually. And then that event was pushed out weeks. So we decided to stick this event here. So that's why there's two virtual webinars today. It was intended to coincide with what HubSpot was talking about. But I think to me, it's really indicative of the current state of the world that we're all in today, that the meetings that we were having, where we're getting an opportunity to sit and talk and meet each other face to face, have now all been changed. And we've been given this opportunity to use tools like Zoom to collaborate. So this is a really exciting opportunity for us to reach out, talk to you all about around collaboration and around Google and HubSpot. So anyways, I'd love to intro the panelists, all of whom, I think bring great perspective, the concept of remote work. From a DemandSage perspective, it's a small and strong team, about a half dozen people. So when the company was forced to go remote, it became really easy. Because the company was already sort of natively remote, building remote platforms. But we'd love to introduce Henry Cipolla, Randy Dailey, and Sonciary Honnoll. Sonciary is actually from a company called Quala, but I'd love for each of them to briefly introduce themselves. So I don't know, Henry, if you wanted to kick off, intro yourself and sort of explain your awesome background you have there.
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Henry Cipolla. I'm the co-founder and CTO here at DemandSage, where, as Ben mentioned, we're helping collaborate through spreadsheets. Before this, I was co-founder and CTO of a company called Localytics. We were a mobile app analytics platform here in Boston. Achieved a lot, worked with a lot of brands, helped them understand their users, and then do different mobile marketing to those users through a lot of different channels. My background is a scuba diving picture, because I figure it's a good way to convey a little bit of personality in what I do.
Thanks, Henry. Randy, do you want to intro yourself? And obviously, you're sticking to the brand and the brand message there with the DemandSage logo in the background.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Randy.
Rookie mistake.
I'm actually really shocked that you did that, but that's cool.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Randy Dailey. I'm co-founder and chief product officer at DemandSage. Unlike Henry, who loves the outdoors, I'm a spreadsheet aficionado and an avid indoorsman. And in the past, I've worked at these really large companies as well as small companies. I've kind of seen the gambit of different kind of collaboration options, and looking forward to the conversation today.
And prior to DemandSage, Randy, you were working with the MBTA, so I'm sure they're going through a bunch of challenges relative to all this remote work. It's really hard for them to be remote, right?
That's true for sure. And, I think about it as different ends of the spectrum. You have startups, super agile, lots of quick movement. Then you have big governmental organizations, in this case, the MBTA, that runs the transit system for state of Massachusetts, basically. And you see quite a different perspective when you're looking at 3-year-long projects with multiple milestones and things like that. So. Yeah, totally.
Collaboration is definitely going to be important to, obviously build the infrastructure we need moving forward. And I'm super excited to introduce Sonciary Honnoll. Quick backstory: Sonciary is my co-founder at Promobox. She's founded an amazing new company called Quala. Sonciary, please introduce yourself. Talk about Quala, but also please tell us why you have that amazing backdrop behind you and where you're
Yeah.
passionate from.
Well, let's start with that first. So I am in Amherst, New Hampshire, in the middle of the woods by a pond. So I've been enjoying the view, trying to take advantage of being able to, work remotely, and glad that I'm here to chat with you guys today. So I am co-founder of a company called Quala, and we are a human-first customer success platform. We blend qualitative measurements with quantitative usage metrics in order to give startups and later stage companies a clear view of customer health. So yes, and previously before Quala, started a Promobox, a marketing tech company in Boston with Ben. Been dedicated and fully in on the Boston eco startup scene for, I don't know how many years now, a long time, more than I care to say.
Dozens of years.
And it's been awesome. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I would love for each of you to sort of give your perspective on being remote. How does it feel? Has it made you more efficient in the ways it's made you more efficient? And then maybe some ways it's made you less efficient. So Sonciary, do you want to jump in and just give us your feeling about collaboration in general, not just specifically reporting, not just specifically HubSpot or Google Sheets, but talk to me about how that's working for you and for your organization.
Yeah, sure. So Quala, our nexus is in Boston. We work out of the Underscore offices, but we're all around the city. And I also work from my home office in New Hampshire. So it wasn't a huge shift, but I have to say, I've found that I love being out in the field. I am my best self when I'm with our customers, whether that's face-to-face. Well, I love being face-to-face. Video conferencing is an amazing way to connect too, but definitely miss a lot of our coffee and lunch meetings chatting about just how we can make our platform better and connecting with people that are in the customer success community. So what I have really loved about working fully remote and having most of our customers remote as well, or all I should say, is that it's been a very, very human experience. So it used to be that when I was remote, if my pups would walk in or snore as they were sleeping, or I would get embarrassed. And now we just realize that, look, we have puppies, we have animals, we have kids, we're normal people, and we're working out of our homes. And I found that I've learned a lot more about my customers, seeing a little bit about, or learning about their home offices. And I've really enjoyed that. What's been maybe a little bit frustrating, of course, is that I love being face-to-face. I love being in the field. So that's been difficult. The other thing, of course, given the fact of current events, people have been under a ton of pressure. So the upside is that we've had a lot of, again, really human conversations, but on the other side of that too, there's been a lot of sharing about difficulties that we're going through and the uncertainty of just what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's great, Sonciary. Randy, please, you've been, in my mind, a remote work aficionado, and in addition to a spreadsheet aficionado, for as long as I've known you. Sort of, is this like finally the world has come back to you, or sort of give me your feeling? Has it been everything you imagined, or there been some changes, both good and bad?
Sure. Yeah, good and bad. It seems to be the right thing. There's trade-offs. It's if you're a developer or something and you're looking to do some flow state work and you want to put your heads down for 4 hours, then it's fantastic. You have this defragmented time. It's really great for this productivity work. But there's a tax on collaboration that has to be managed. If you're not kind of putting in energy there, you get entropy, you get badness. There's a little bit more writing things down, a little bit more sort of that overhead to manage it. Net though, Demand Stage, again, we're a pretty small unit right now, so I think the juice has sort of been worth the squeeze in terms of us really netting out on a lot of productivity.
Yeah.
I'll see if my co-founder agrees,
Yeah,
of
no,
course.
why don't we turn it back to the outdoor enthusiast?
You're right. I am a curmudgeon and I hate it. And I think it's wonderful that it's been forced on me, because I did not have the muscle for it at all before. And I still don't. I don't have the discipline. I get distracted. We talked about pups. It's great having the dog, but when he comes to play with the ball or something, that is way better than writing this email I don't want to write. So I go and do that. And so I find myself staying up later than ever before to keep caught up with work, just because I don't have the discipline to do this well. I also am used to sending an email and then like glancing over my shoulder at my employee's body language to see like, did I upset this person? Did I like, did this land okay? And so losing all of that has been a bit of a challenge, having to replace it with tools and things. And I actually really appreciated hearing what Sonciary had to say, because there is a humanizing piece to it that wasn't there before, and maybe I should embrace more of that as like a lesson. You'll see that I'm hiding behind a virtual background because I'm too embarrassed to show you guys how messy my room is. Like, maybe that's an example of something I need to do better to get some of that human piece back that is missing, that makes me not like it as much.
Yeah. I need to poke on one thing, and you need it. So talk to me about the juxtaposition of, you said you're a curmudgeon, but you hate remote. Talk me through that. Talk me through that sort of.
I'm a curmudgeon that hates like new and different. Like we've worked the same way forever and ever, and I like come into work, talk to my coworkers, and like do things the same old way. Versus I guess more traditional, meaning that I hate people and I want to be alone, which is not true. Okay, so call me out for my misuse of the word curmudgeon. Thank you, Ben.
I was worried that if you went remote, you become more curmudgeon, but I thought that's what you were saying. But yeah, no, it's really, really good.
I have to say though, Henry, just quickly about backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I was on call with someone for the first time. We were meeting for the first time. It was sort of a virtual coffee. It was great. And his room was so messy. So I have this like background, and it was chaotic. He was like his whole gaming setup, but we talked about his love for gaming. And also I noticed that he had tons of Pop-Tart boxes that were just like amassed behind him on a dresser. So then we were like, what's your favorite Pop-Tart? Mine's cinnamon. I hate the frosting. Like, and it created this whole opportunity for connection. So no pressure, but it can be a good thing.
Cool. Well, I'm going to bring us back. I love the Pop-Tart story, Sonciary. And I think and this sort of echoes with the positioning of your company, Quala, and how you're trying to bring sort of the human back to technology. But it's interesting that these human stories are actually becoming more human. You probably would never have known that person like Pop-Tarts if you hadn't seen that in the background. So it's a really great story. And transitioning that back to our topic, arguably one of the most inhuman things, and maybe this is my bias coming into this question, one of the most inhuman things that anyone can operate in is a spreadsheet. Sorry, earmuffs, Randy, any spreadsheet aficionados. But, I would sort of love, Randy, especially, I'm going to come right at you because you claim to be the aficionado on spreadsheets, and I'm not going to deny that, but sort of tell me, how do we humanize spreadsheets? Like, how do we make them more human when in reality they're really intended to show data, to show numbers? Is it possible?
You're on mute again.
I got it this time.
All
right. So recollecting here, I think spreadsheets, they get a bad name. You have every SaaS vendor kind of pitching against it, saying, get out of spreadsheets, get into our tool. But I think a lot of times that is actually code for, stop sending static documents around in email attached, with stale data, and people sort of malign spreadsheets to mean that. It doesn't have to mean that. Spreadsheets themselves, there's a lot to like about them. In my mind, it's really about finding ways to make them easy to use, to remove some of those barriers to access, really. So if you think about spreadsheets, there's this process of manually exporting data and importing it into your spreadsheet. That's not very fun. The process of kind of ideating exactly what your dashboard should look like, that's not very fun. The process of kind of building the custom reports, again, that can not be fun. This gets a little bit into just, the demand sage perspective, where we think the solution here is automation, where we are trying to automate this process. We're trying to give you turnkey templates. We're trying to actually bring some of that humanity and maybe the ease of use of a SaaS tool in terms of strong templates, strong defaults, all of that to the spreadsheet. And to kind of maybe just touch on the social aspect super quick. I mean, there's comments, there's presence, there's tasks, there's the ability to annotate. I think when you compare Google Sheets or something to, a generic SaaS dashboard from your favorite SaaS vendor, you'll find there's a lot more in terms of kind of collaboration niceties there. It's just a matter of kind of getting on board and exploiting those.
Yeah, you actually mentioned a second ago. I think it's really interesting how you mentioned sort of the learning curve of a spreadsheet, and a lot of what maybe people don't like, the focus group of one being me, is some of the sort of intimidated aspects, data entry, things like that, and removing that maybe allows it to become more human. But you mentioned a second ago email. It's as old as sort of technology that you had an email and you attach a spreadsheet. And I know, Henry, you have some opinions on email. Sort of talk to me about that workflow that we've all seen done every day, which is spreadsheet. Hey, take a look at the spreadsheet in an email. Is there a better way to do that? And sort of, is there a role of emails and spreadsheets being one? Sort of talk to me about your opinions there.
So, it's set up. The question is set up for failure because I have to like champion the thing that we just agreed on feels inhuman and terrible from your own words, right? Email is neat because, and maybe some of it's because we have a lot of muscle for it, but email is like a poor man's asynchronous communication workshop and warehouse, right? Because you can use it to as your task scheduler. You can use it as your way to communicate about very specific threads. You can use it as your way to keep track of things. You can use it as a way to message and notify someone else. We use a lot of email terms like bring it to the top of your inbox and reply all and all of these things because they're like built into how we've learned to work. And so when a tool like Slack comes around, which is very popular, and I'm glad we have it, and I know everybody loves it, but I find to be the worst part of the whole remote experience. It comes to disrupt and usurp a lot of those things that email does really well. So I think that while we're going to hear from Randy and all the new age way of doing things, if you have things that are working over email, I think that a lot of companies go out of their way to drop that and replace with new tools just because. And there's still some stuff that works, right? Like, and there's still, no matter how remote you are, a memo sent over email with, hey, here's the problem and here's what we're doing about it, is still one of the tools that is most effective. Right? And you don't have to worry about were employees in general when I said that, or did they miss it? Did people have the right alerts set up or not? Right? It just gets out there and gets read. So I've got a lot of affinity for email still, even though this whole experience is teaching me how to use Slack and how to configure it and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, I've been in, so I was an intern at American Online, if you can remember that, in 1999. So I'm old enough to have gone through many stories around we finally have the death of email. There's some new killer app that's going to kill email, and email is continues to soldier on to all the points you just mentioned. We actually have a great question from an attendee around sort of structured databases and the fact that Google Sheets is unstructured, and the role of DemandSage and others bringing some structure into Sheets. And from that perspective, making them more of a useful app. So, I'd love to turn it back to Randy on this, and then would definitely love your thoughts, Henry, because I just know the pain points of structured, unstructured work that you have underway.
Yeah, so maybe a couple of points. I think the first, almost the unstructuredness and flexibility of G Sheets, that is a lot of its power in a lot of ways. You think about a HubSpot dashboard. They've got great reporting, use their reporting, but you don't have a way to sort of munge in your own first-party data. You can't take your HubSpot data and set it against your goals or your budget or your resource constraints or annotations you've made in the past. Google Sheets sort of gives you a nice value prop as this all-in-one workplace, precisely because you can bring in all of this unstructured data. Having said that, speaking from what we've done on the DemandSage perspective, just to maybe elucidate the use case a little bit, DemandSage connects directly to HubSpot, So we know that a deal is a deal. We know as a contact is a contact. We sort of know the structure of your data. And that means we can organize it. We can give you these default templates that will give you, value-added metrics, or will lay out the data in a certain way, or give you a template that helps you see your overdue deals or something like that. We are very aware of the HubSpot data model. HubSpot's a great product because their data model is very prescriptive and it's very similar customer to customer. So we do have a lot of liberties to kind of add that taxonomy, add that sort of prescriptive opinionated layer in the reports.
So just to send it back to Henry, in maybe a slightly different way, does the flexibility and collaborative aspects of G Suite make structured data reporting challenging? Right? I can edit, if I'm not given the right permissions, I can mess up a spreadsheet fairly easily.
Look how popular wikis are, and wikis are the definition of unstructured editing. And as mean as I can be about Slack, I think I can be 10 times meaner about internal wikis. That's where information goes to get hidden and die. So you do have a lot of the same problems with sheets. You get tab overflow, where someone creates a tab that's the reporting tab, and then someone else says, "Oh boy, I want this tab, but I want a slightly different view on it." So they clone it and then they change it a little bit. And 3 years later, you have a whole lot of tabs with the date at which point that was timestamped, and then the next one was created in the next one, and you've got versions in there. And so if you're aware that that is a problem you can run into, then just like with wikis, if you're aware that's a problem you can run into, the way you solve the problem there is you create a good table of contents, you create discipline around going back and editing and trimming down and moving things, and you use analytics to see which pages no one ever reads to decide, hey, maybe these are unlinked or whatever. If you take that same discipline to Sheets, you can have a good experience. Like this is the master tab, and all reporting, like we'll pull from the other tabs, but we're all going to use this as the updated version and the answers. And don't create new tabs, use commenting. Don't create new tabs, go in there and add what you want to the existing tab and make it a single live document that has your information. Is a good habits and good hygiene to get into. Usually, going back to the question itself, are you bringing taxonomy and ontology to Google Sheets? That's upfront work, right? What are the columns that we really care about, and how do we put those in? And if you do a lot of upfront work, then the rest becomes just display, and that I think isn't so bad.
Yeah. And yeah, no, appreciate that. And sort of, it sounds to me, Henry, like it's important that you need to embrace the flexibility of the medium, right? So if you're gonna lean in on Google Sheets, Matthew, it's one of those situations where you're gonna have to lean in to everything that's good about it, and it does present challenges. But I think to the point earlier about what happens with technologies, you get muscle memory and people start getting used to it. And and they create their own tabs and things like that. So I think that's a really great way to frame it. And so I would certainly love to turn it back to you, Sonciary, and just sort of get your perspective on sort of our in this new world that we're in now, where we're not traveling, we're not having coffees. Do you think we're going to be more focused on the metrics, more in our spreadsheets, more in our reporting dashboards than we ever have been?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
People?
Yeah, well, I would certainly say that we are trending towards that. I think we've already seen, specifically, I mean, my world is, post-sales, so customer success. We've already seen a lot of managers now sort of hiding behind data dashboards and not having the customer connections that we would love for them to have to understand truly what's motivating our customers and what's the value that they perceive from the products we're providing. So I think that was already happening before we started going, or before we went primarily remote. I do think, though, that going remote has, from the conversations I've been having, has really made people crave having those one-on-one connections, having some time by the water cooler, talking with our customers face-to-face if it's over Zoom. So I see that the pendulum has swung, or I should say is swinging back, where people are realizing that it's not that we need data. We absolutely need data. It's hugely important for us to make good decisions, but we also need the qualitative metrics or measurements that we get from having conversations with our fellow team members, with our customers, with our partners, in order to inform how we leverage that data. What's the narrative behind that data? And a lot of that comes from personal conversations. So I think the pendulum swung hard in one way, and we're coming back to find that that qualitative, quantitative piece, those person-to-person interactions are incredibly powerful, and we need to put a premium on those.
So how do you, I love the Pop-Tart story, and I forget partner, customer, potential employee, but how do you quantify that? Like, that to me is, to know that piece of information about somebody is deep and meaningful. How does that get into data?
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I think similarly how we were talking about Google Sheets and how unstructured they are, we're looking for the ways that we can provide flexibility to measure the unmeasurable. We need flexibility around that, but we also need formulas for how companies can be successful. So one way to do that, just talking specifically about Quala, because this is the world I live in, is allowing people on the front lines who are having conversations with customers to be able to add information about those conversations in a way that can be measured. So for instance, it's helping them with topics, things to discuss, watching how customers are using their products, and then surfacing up topics, things for them to discuss on their calls. And then after those calls, asking CSMs some very key questions where they include a rating from 1 to 5 that allows us at Quala to be able to actually quantify that qualitative data, is essentially how we're attacking it. So attacking is a little bit of a strong word, how we're looking at it, because it is very important. And there's a lot of unstructured data out there, narrative data out there that has to be captured, that we have to put numbers behind if we're going to use it in a way that's meaningful for our customer interactions.
So I'm going to throw it over to Randy. I'd love Randy to dovetail on top of this one. How do you sort of meld the worlds of sort of structured data, what is truth from a data perspective, and what is sort of opinion, right? So Google has great commenting tools. They have great task assigning tools, Google Sheets, excuse me. How do you meld those two worlds together to paint a better picture, sort of the qualitative, quantitative in your mind?
Yeah, sure. So I would think about Google Sheets, the features that you mentioned, that sort of that collaborative layer. You have tasks, you can assign tasks, and you can suggest edits, in fact, which is a great way to do it, where you're kind of affirmatively saying you should do this rather than just saying, I don't know, this seems, hedgy. So that's almost a domain of kind of that opinionated world. You've got the kind of free-form way to mark up the document, to add comments, to add annotations, to add your own flavor. At the same time, the actual contents of the spreadsheet are hopefully the source, the sources of truth. If you have like a metric spreadsheet or something, great. Your canvas is the spreadsheet. Maybe you're automating bringing that in. That's your source of truth. There's your Google Analytics. There's your HubSpot. And almost that opinion layer becomes really the commenting tools, et cetera, if you're using Sheets the way we use Sheets.
Right. And Henry, would love for you to talk about, one of the things that we hear from everyone is that everyone wants to integrate everything, right? I want all my data in one place. I'd love to get your perspective on that. I mean, obviously the technical challenges around that, but the practicality of that, and are people on marketing teams or agencies working with marketing clients, are they chasing something that's nearly impossible? And should they focus in on one particular element at a time? Or does it make sense to try to create a world where all data is merged into one?
This depends a little bit on what your data is, right? One of the reasons why we like HubSpot is HubSpot's a pretty good source of record for a lot of things. Salesforce is another example of this, where this is now one integration. If you bring your Salesforce or HubSpot data into Sheets or whatever tool you're using, that gets you a lot for not a lot of lift, which is great. If you are advertising to a huge long tail of networks and you want all of that data in, or you're on every social channel possible, then you could be set up for a huge lift in order to get all of that integration. Fortunately, there are partners to leverage. Obviously, I'll point the finger back at us because that's a thing we do. But there's a lot of different solutions for how you can get that data in. And so, as long as you're not doing it yourself, which is the worst possible case, right? Spending engineering cycles to reinvent a wheel that other people have invented just to get half of your data into a sheet so that no one really trusts it anyway is not a great outcome for anybody. But if you use the right partners and you attack this successfully, yeah, I do think it's possible to get all of your data in. And you even see companies that will start to prioritize stuff, right? Like there's a lot of companies that say, if something isn't measurable, we won't spend money on it. So now your initiatives need to start with, well, how are we going to measure this as we plan this initiative? And maybe we can't do this ad campaign that we wanted to do with you because you don't provide measurement and we'll have to find someone else. And I think that's super important. Otherwise, it's a constant ad hoc nightmare that never gets resolved.
Yeah, it's a really greate point. And would sort of love to introduce a concept which I think potentially is controversial. There's a lot of definitions around that, and that's artificial intelligence, layering artificial intelligence. And I know both from a DemandSage perspective and from a Quala perspective, it's part of the visions and in a way for their platforms. And any other folks on the call, I'm sure, are thinking artificial intelligence or thinking about ways to leverage artificial intelligence. It's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar business over the next decade or so. I'm going to turn it to you, Sonciary, because I know I'm going to move away from the two product and technical, and not to say you're not product or technical, but sort of would love your opinion as someone who's building a human-first customer success platform. How do you view the role and long-term role of artificial intelligence to start making human-like judgments on our data on top of Sheets or on top of platforms like HubSpot or platforms like yours?
Sure. I mean, I think I'm totally into it. Like, I think that there's absolutely a place, and it's helpful to us. I think the key is that we leverage AI in a way that serves us, and not in a way that's hurtful to us and our businesses. And that probably seems like pretty trite and obvious. But what I mean by that is, I think the place for AI is that it can help us make better decisions. Certainly, it can help us save time. It can help us create more efficiencies while we are watching the data come in, and we have a layer of AI that allows for surfacing of insights and suggestions so that we can act on those insights and suggestions in a way that's more human based on the additional information that we have. That's hugely powerful for us. So I know, obviously at Quala, that's something that we think a lot about, that we are using, that we want to continue to leverage and grow on, because we think it's better for our customers if they can have this information at their fingertips, and we think it'll make them better at what they do. Now, we think that it enables them to be better at what they do. We don't think that it takes over, not certainly at this point, given, for us, we're in startups, we all work, we all realize how important our relationships are. I mean, we are a relationship driven culture for sure. So there are things that we uniquely do in our conversations and our connections that I think AI can help support. And I think we carry it across the finish line. So yeah, hugely important, I think, for us, and it'd be bullion to our efforts.
Yeah, and I would love to, because I know AI is part of the ongoing conversation at DemandSage and part of the vision of DemandSage. So I'm going to throw it as a sort of jump ball between Randy and Henry. And if you have a strong opinion and will want to jump in on this topic of AI and its role in collaboration on top of our data.
Yeah, I mean, we think like a lot of the ritual people do in spreadsheets is they're in spreadsheets, they're trying to dig through the data, manipulate the data to unearth insights. And long term, we see the opportunity as being able to, automatically surface those insights for people, to almost analyze your data on your behalf. So that may mean saying, hey, it looks like you have a campaign here that has a pretty good, cost per acquisition, but maybe you have a long deal cycle. You can't really wait to see what the LTV is. we can give you an early notification and say something like, hey, this campaign that looks really good, actually nobody's advancing to a pricing phone call within 30 days. We could surface that. There's all sorts of benefits to being able to sort of deeply understand the data of something like a HubSpot in terms of us being able to add that like judgment or prescriptive layer to things. So we see a lot of cool tailwinds in that direction the next couple of years. That's definitely a place we'll be looking at.
Yeah, as a founder and chief technical officer, Henry, would love your perspective on the role of AI. Is it truth? Is it fiction? Yeah, would definitely love your thoughts.
I mean, it's certainly truth. Does that justify the fact that, like, I don't remember the number, but something like 70% of startups that got funded last year had AI either in their pitch or in their name? And like, one of the tricks when you're trying to raise money is to talk about how your long-term vision is an AI play, because that's all anyone wants to talk about. No. So yes, I think it's the future, but I think a lot of people get so hung up on what AI can eventually do that they don't think about all the steps in between and how far you can get with just rules and in simple human assumptions about what you're doing. Right? Most of the data that we're getting coming in comes from sources we know. We already know roughly where the lines should be. So do I need anomaly detection on all of my data at time zero? Maybe not. Maybe all I need are thresholds. Do I need predictions on the results of these 5 campaigns in order to figure out where to put the money? Probably not. Maybe a simple formula based on what happened in the past will give me a ratio that gives me enough of a guide. So yes, amazing things we can do with AI, amazing things we can do with AI in the future, but let's get today right first.
Yeah, and sort of taking AI, which is, I'd say from a technological evolution perspective here or in the future, let's take it down to what's facing a lot of people today. So if we think of the value proposition of Demand Sage, enterprise grade marketing intelligence for everyone, and if you look at a platform like Quala, which is a human first customer success platform, I think the common thread between the two companies are the fact that you are both supporting earlier stage companies, whether that's startups and or small businesses. So talk to me, I'll start with you, Sonciary. Talk to me about how you see the role of your companies in protecting and supporting arguably the most vulnerable part of our business strata, and also ensuring that they're going to be successful to address some of the challenges that we're going to have over the next 12 months. Talk to me about your perspective there and how technology and your platform and collaboration can be used to, sort of support that.
Yeah, I think I would probably start with just the importance of efficiency. And I know we all talk a lot about efficiency, but there are things that we are doing, decisions that we're making, strategic decisions where we're not totally sure if those activities and those decisions are pushing our business forward. So I think it's incredibly important for us to take a look at where we're spending our time, those key actions, and actually measure. And it's not hard to do. That's, of course, one of the things that we help with, but to measure if those activities are actually driving an increasing connection with your customers, which is increasing renewability, increasing the value of your platform. So I think that efficiency has always been something that we've been focused on, but it's now extremely important, especially with, to your point, Ben, how you said the most vulnerable of businesses that are out there really trying to look to see how they can survive. And I think that, the ROI that you provide as a platform, as a partner, is extremely important. Why are your customers working with you? Is it easy to work with you? Are there efficient ways to work with you? How can you help them understand how to better connect and measure their customers, and if they are providing value to their customers, and how can you do that, of course, like I said, extremely efficiently. So I think the key is for us to help them understand what they're doing that's providing value, and to get rid of the wasteful actions and activities that don't provide value and don't help their business, and to come alongside them. I mean, just the conversation that you can have around honesty is incredibly powerful. Look, this is an uncertain, difficult time. We're not saying that it's going to be easy. We're here to come alongside and help you. We're all in it together. Just acknowledge the fact that this is not an easy thing to move through, and have those one-to-one conversations. They can be so powerful, and your customers will tell you how you can help them. I think that's where, you know, all of us would be better to start, is just with those one-on-one human connections.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn the demand sage. Thank you, Sonciary. I'm gonna turn the demand sage question over to Henry, because I think it's really interesting. Your story, you know, again, current value proposition of demand sage is enterprise grade marketing intelligence for everyone, but having formed arguably one of the most successful data analytics platform for big enterprise. Talk to me about how you view data and bringing data to everyone, and how you view that supporting these businesses and supporting society in general.
Well, one of the things to note there is that, especially when you're just starting out, most people's data isn't super unique, right? Most people have the same types of objects. Most people want to do the same things with those objects. So what you can do is you can work with a number of companies, look at their objects, look at the analysis that's helpful to them, and then you can scale that out so that other companies don't have to go back and reinvent that same thing. And so you start to get a lot of value out of the volume of data, without actually having to share anyone's data with anyone else. You're just by learning how the data is connected and how people want to use it. And so you can repeat this and make a really good system for a lot of people to get a lot of value out of their data without them having to invent it. Tying that back to the theme of collaboration and how we all work, right? One of the first uses of this, hey, so someone's looking at my data for me and help me understand it, what do they do, is notifications and deciding like what should you bring your attention to right now. I think that's one of the most useful things, because as we're moving into this asynchronous, anyone, you know, like world where you have all your work in one spot that we're trying to collaborate in the sheets, figuring out how to direct people's attention so their time, less of their time is spent exploring to find these things, but instead actually deciding and acting on them, is the most useful thing you can do. So if you have a lot of data you can look at to figure out what are the patterns, and then we can use those patterns to help other people find their stuff, I think you've actually accomplished a lot and you have saved some time.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Henry, I see people struggling with how do we build a spreadsheet to show our sales and marketing report. And, you know, I think your point is that's been done many times. And if you can use platforms that are already doing that, then you eliminate a lot of wasted time there. Randy, I would love for you to, so we have an attendee question I'd love to throw over to you, because it has the word opinionated dashboards in it. And I know the word opinionated dashboards will jump out to you. So if you see the question, do you think we'll start seeing a shift to more sheet-oriented analytics products rather than opinionated dashboards, Amplitude, GA, etc.? So I don't know if you wanted to handle that one.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if they have to be mutually exclusive. It says rather than opinionated dashboards. You can have a pattern where, hey, you've got a spreadsheet, but you know, the Google Sheets is a very extensible platform. You can build plugins on top of it. You can sort of extend the platform. And that's part of what we see ourselves doing at Demand Sage, where we're offering like a template gallery where you can press a button, you can download sort of a opinionated report and have it work. And it's a lot easier for us to come up with this library of different reports for your win-loss analysis or your new opportunities or whatever you'd like. Because in the end of the day, they're sheets. They're more easy to create. They're more easy to just load the data into. We don't have to build a giant front end. So I kind of see the terminal state here, I guess, as, yeah, Sheets is great. Sheets is a lot of flexibility. If you can take Sheets and you can give it the ease of use of a SaaS product by adding in niceties like real-time data sync or template galleries, I think you achieve a better platform. You have the sheet with all of its benefits in terms of being able to bring in all of the data from all of the sources, whether it's offline or not. And you have that married with kind of the ease of use of a SaaS tool. So I think we're seeing some early shifts that way in the market, but I'd expect it to continue.
That's great. We also have another great question coming from Matthew on the attendee list, and it's sort of near and dear to my heart. But you know, when your client asks for data, to back it up, to back the vision up and there is no data. I think Sonciary will remember at Promobox all the conversations we had with Promobox customers where we insisted that it was working, but the data really didn't create a strong enough case there. So, how do you address that? And where would you direct their attention, instead? And how do you project demand ultimately? Because basically anything that you say is all changed. Like there is no pattern to be matched to a certain extent. So I'm gonna throw a jump ball up on that question. If any of the panelists would love to jump in on that one, I think it was a great one.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. And I don't know if this exactly answers it, but sort of where my head goes is, where can we borrow credibility? And we have this conversation a lot for those of us that have raised capital, and we're talking to investors, if we're talking to customers, if we're talking to partners, if we want a team member to join, we're asking them to take a leap of faith when we don't have a ton of data. And that leap of faith, that credibility can be borrowed from a lot of the qualitative narrative, the conversations that you've been having with people in your community that you've been capturing. It can also happen with the market analysis that you've been doing or data from there. Again, I'm not sure if this goes directly to the question, but I think for me, my head immediately goes to, we're all developing, assumptions and creating a thesis based on what we think is true. And we have to just get through that feedback loop as quickly as possible. So we have an idea, we think it's this. We might not have a ton of data. We have some narrative around that we think is true. And we're gonna go ahead and build that thesis. We're gonna test it, we're gonna measure it, we're gonna tweak it, and we're gonna go through that loop again. So I think, there is definitely a premium to be put on quickness and ways that you can borrow that credibility from qualitative metrics that can really be helpful to your cause. And again, that can work for any different cohort, whether it's investor, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So sort of pulling on this thread, Henry, would love for you to speak in your immense wisdom about sort of projecting forward, given the fact that everything in the past is potentially different. Like how does technology play a role? How do we work in such uncertainty with our data and our view of the future?
I mean, I don't think the data is actually as uncertain. It doesn't take a lot of time to find really small tests, to generate data out. Like creating data when there isn't data is often not that hard. You can look at everything we've just done and look at the output and the result of it. You can sample. So if you've got a lot of things, we can take 10% of them and look at all of them. We can look for comparables, right? So what are other people doing and how is that working? So even when we're in like a really uncertain time, like right now, where suddenly every conversation you have, people are like, well, we're in this this time that we've never seen before. Actually, if you look at market data and you look at other like larger macro data sets, what we're looking at actually doesn't look all that different from 2008. So there are comparables and there are formulas you can apply to answer whatever question it is you're trying to answer. And no, this is not correct and accurate data. It is assumptive, presumptuous data, but it's grounded in assumptions that we can all agree on. And that is, better than nothing. And then we can do a couple of small little tests to prove that, hey, it's trending in the way that we're predicting, and reevaluate in a day or a week or whatever, depending on what we're talking about.
So I'm going to pull us back to the collaboration question, and I'm going to tee you up on this, Randy. So make sure you're unmuted. It's obvious. We know there's challenges with remote work, right? That's putting a lot of pressure on everybody. And I thought the question Matthew asked is a good one. Like it's gonna create challenges with us presenting what we're doing and getting people to buy into our vision. So how do you think we should change how we work? Like talk to me about how you see the future of collaboration based on everything we've learned before this situation and sort of what we're learning now.
Yeah, I would break down sort of the challenges of remote work into these two parts that can be overcome. The first is tools, and they have to sort of play catch up on the collaboration story, on the presence story, on the ability to kind of simulate that water cooler feel in the office. But the second big bucket, I think, is norms. And we're just talking about kind of the processes you set, the kind of cultural inertia at your business that you may need to overcome. And I happen to think that changing the norms is probably kind of the bigger lever into achieving success in remote work. And we've sort of touched on this a couple times, but if you think about like real life meetings, they're synchronous, they're real time. This is a synchronous meeting. And if you think about asynchronous things, that's like email. I send a message, Henry replies 5 hours later. When you think about remote work, I think a lot of success depends on embracing those asynchronous workflows. So not necessarily having an expectation that somebody's going to respond on Slack if you are a newly distributed company in multiple time zones with people working flexible hours. Like you can fight against the system and sort of those barriers, or you could try to embrace the asynchronousness. And if you buy into that, what that really means is, put your work items where the document, where the work is. Put your tasks where the work is. If you're talking about a deal, that can be associated with the deals object in HubSpot. If you're talking about a contact, that can be associated in HubSpot. If you're talking about a support ticket, you can go to Zendesk. All of these things are sort of giving you a place to collaborate where the stuff is happening. It's contextualized, it's asynchronous. People can have filtered views. They can see what's assigned to me. They can see what's overdue. That kind of structure pays, a lot of good dividends in this remote work world where all of your collaborative interactions have longer feedback loops, takes longer to get information, so you have more threads, and those more threads can be overwhelming. So to kind of sum that up, if you can kind of do collaboration in some of these SaaS tools, do it. There's a bunch of places where they fall short though. Like HubSpot, you could collaborate on deals, but you couldn't collaborate on the metrics that talk about deals. Or if you're talking about marketing campaigns, that doesn't live in one system of record per se. That's sort of a decentralized thing. Is it your trade show? Is it your digital campaigns? So I think there are a whole bunch of cases where you ought to use that spreadsheet as that new sort of in workflow based place to collaborate, to talk about things, talk about metrics. It lends itself to asynchronicity. And it helps get past that overwhelmingness of having nowhere to talk about metrics or something besides Slack or email.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Randy. And I think we're going to continue, I think from a demand stage perspective, we're going to continue to sort of be thought leaders around collaborative work, especially around metrics and creating collaboration on that. We're getting close to the end of our time here. I think we have time for one more question, but before then, and appreciate the audience participation. But before we do that, we'd love each of the panelists to give me sort of a new Twitter size, like what's that, 240 characters, view of the future. Like, where do you see us 12 months from now, assuming that we come back next year, same time, same bat channel? Where do you see us? I'll start with you, Henry.
So there's a lot of advantages to remote work. Like it allows companies to access a pool of talent they couldn't before. It allows companies to leverage time zones better. It allows people to leverage different skills that just exist in different pockets around the country. It's cheaper. You don't need to maintain as many offices. So the inertia is positive and it's there. So you will see that even all these big companies that would have never gone remote, that were forced to go all remote. I have a friend at United. United is one of the oldest companies in terms of how they operate. They don't even have a casual dress code there. United force every employee that isn't critical, isn't in critical operations to work from home, and there's no going back from that. They're going to have employees come back in the office, but they're going to have seen some pieces that can work, and they're going to have seen some of these advantages. And so you're going to get a lot of this. I forgot this is supposed to be Twitter sized. You're going to get a lot of
Twitter
companies,
string.
You're going to get a lot of companies that still that hold on to pieces of this. And a year from now, once all the dust is settled, it will be more normal to work from home. It'll be more normal to have someone dial in with their kid in the background. And so while I hate it, it's better for the world, and I'm happy to see us go there.
So Randy, I'm going to swing it back to you. Talk to me about the future. Talk to me 12 months from now. Are we all going to be on iPad Pros? Is that like, what do we?
I'm a big fan, but I would say, yeah, I mean, everyone's going to go through this boot camp where they have to learn some basic literacy and how to work remote. We'll be playing with new tools. We will be experimenting with more sort of asynchronous means of communications, comments and follow-ups versus, ad hoc emails, things like that. Some will stick, some won't, but for me, I think it'll just be this big exercise of people building a basic literacy and like new tools in general. Hard to predict what sticks, but like it's a net good thing for people to kind of have that diversity of experience, to Henry's point. Wrap it up.
Perfect size. And then, last but not least, Sonciary, you've been remote at Quala before it was certainly cool, and definitely before it was required. Talk to me about where the world will be 12 months from now around remote collaboration.
Sure. I think a lot of companies were thrown into the deep end. They were forced into doing this and were not prepared at all. I think we're going to see a huge influx of creativity and flexibility. Like it was said before, with Randy, it's not going to stick for everyone. It's not right for everyone in every company. But I think that people will find that they are finding more creative ways to connect and do their work. And they're going to take that into wherever they end up, whether it's at their home office or at their official headquarters, or a mix of both.
That's great. Well, appreciate that. And we're sort of getting to the end of our time here. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank all the participants. We've got some great questions. And this is like an improv group, right? This is like, I don't know, Improv Asylum if you're from Boston, the Groundlings if you're from, I think, California, Second City from Chicago. So if you want to attend the 4:00 session, I guarantee it'll be very, very different. But if you know anyone that would find value in this, I'm going to send the link in here right now. Feel free to share it with folks. And again, just want to thank everybody. We're going to be blogging and recording and sending this around to everybody. And if you have questions about DemandSage, visit demandsage.com, or Quala. That's at quala.io. Sincerely, let me know if I get the spelling right.
Quala.io.
Exactly. So yeah, thank you everybody, and wash hands regularly, and hope to hear from you all soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye guys.